Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Tonight's video features true scary movie theater going experiences. I hope you enjoy. I want to take time to thank Plague Games. Plague Games sends me amazing stories all the time, guys. So big shout out to my friend. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. My name is Tom and I'm 25 years old. 2 years ago I went to see the new It movie that everyone was talking about. I got to my local movie theater around 11:15 p.m., about 15 minutes or so before the movie would start. I bought myself popcorn, a large Sprite and a few candy bars. When I arrived in the auditorium, it was empty as to be expected. I sat down and went on my phone while the commercials and trailers play. 2 minutes after I arrived, a man walked into the auditorium. He looked to be about 6'4", with long black hair, and was wearing a long black leather coat. He sat in the same row as me, but on the other end. The movie was about to start. I put my phone on silent and began focusing on the movie. As I was putting my phone away, I looked across at the guy that came in after me, and I could see him staring at me. The auditorium was dark, so I couldn't see clearly, but I'm sure he was looking right at me. I looked away and back at the movie. I was a little weirded out, but I tried to tell myself he wasn't staring at me. Maybe he was just zoning out or whatever. I'm not sure how long it was into the movie, maybe around 20 minutes or so, when I took another glance at the guy, and this time he was definitely watching me. His body was turned towards me and he was staring right at me. I looked back at him for a few seconds, very scared and confused as to what this guy was doing. Once more I looked back at the movie, tried to ignore him. Though inside I was freaking out. What does this guy want, I thought. I then heard a shuffling noise coming from where the guy was. Bravely I looked back at him. This time he wasn't staring. He was seemingly watching the movie. However, I noticed that he moved about 4 or 5 seats closer to me. I had no idea what this weirdo was up to. I thought to myself, if he does one more weird thing that makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm just going to leave. Funny enough though, at that point he got up and walked down the stairs towards the exit. I was thinking to myself, please just leave. Right before turning around the corner through the exit, he stopped. He didn't turn around to look at me or anything. I swear he must have stood there for 2 minutes before finally leaving. I took a breath of relief, thinking I might be able to enjoy the rest of the movie. And I did, because thankfully the man never returned, and I was beginning to forget about him. I left the theater and got in my car. Just before leaving the parking lot, I looked in my rearview mirror to see the same guy staring at me from across the parking lot. I stared back at him while feeling my heart sink. He then started walking towards my car. Of course, at that point, I drove as fast as I could out of there. I have no idea who this man was or what he wanted with me. After this incident, I never went to the movie theater at night, and I certainly didn't go alone. Story number 2. My name is Brett. And this story happened when I used to work at a movie theater, about 6 years ago. I used to work on concessions, selling popcorn, drinks, candy, and hot dogs, and all sorts of things. I mainly worked late until closing, because stupidly during my interview, I said I could work anytime, any day. On my first day, me and some other employees were shown around the building, on how everything works, where everything is, etc. This is important for later on in the story. At one point we were shown where to take out the garbage. You had to go through a fire exit, which only opened one way, and walk down what was like an old abandoned building site, where the garage bins were. It was important that you don't shut the door behind you, because like I said, it only opened one way. However, the guy showing us around closed the door, and said if it does close for whatever reason, this is how you get out. He proceeded to show us how to get back into the theater. You had to go down some hallways, up some stairs, through this and through that. It was a very large area and sort of underground. I remember thinking at the time, I hope I don't get locked in here, because I will never remember this. For the first 3 months of working there, I had no problems taking out the trash. However, this night was different. I think it was a Wednesday at 1:30 a.m., and the last movie had just finished. So I would nearly be done with my shift after I finished up cleaning. It was just me and one other employee. Like most nights, I went through the door to take out the garbage. As I threw the trash away, I heard a door slam shut. My first thought was, oh, no, please don't be shut. I turned around and saw the door was now closed, so I was now locked in here. I went up to the door and knocked a few times, also shouting out for my colleague's name. Unsurprisingly, I never got a response and no one opened the door for me. I sighed and thought, okay, I better just try and remember how it was to get out of here. I started walking around clueless, trying to find a way out. Shortly after, I heard footsteps down the corridor behind me. At first I was thinking, thank God someone can tell me how to get out of here. When I turned around, I couldn't see anything though. Hello? I called out. No answer. Weird, I swear I heard someone. I shrugged it off and carried on walking around. Not even 10 seconds later, I heard the footsteps again coming from behind me. Who's there? Hello? No answer once again. However, this time as I was looking around behind me, I saw someone watching me from around the corner. I had to watch closely for a second to make sure what I was seeing was real. It was. There was someone watching me. I think it was a man with his hood up. I spoke out once again, this time with fear in my voice. Hello? Who are you? The figure then ducked out of sight. This freaked me out a lot. I ran up some nearby stairs and rushed down some more corridors. In my head, I'm thinking, please, God, just get me the hell out of here. I stopped for a second because I thought I heard footsteps again. I did, but it wasn't walking this time. Now it was full out running. I turned around and the running noise was coming from the stairs down the corridor. I quickly ran into a room and hid behind some large boxes. I hid there for what felt like hours as I listened to those footsteps. It sounded like he was going around through each room. I thought, I need to move, otherwise he will find me. As quietly as I could, I looked outside and checked around. The coast was clear. I was feeling very claustrophobic and was panicking for my life, to be honest. I think due to adrenaline, I was just running around. By some miracle, I bumped into two of management who were walking towards a car park, which you can also get to by walking through this weird, large, empty area. When the two managers saw me, they asked if I was okay and why I was out of breath and looked so frightened. I told them what I saw and what had just happened. They looked confused and said to me, I don't know who could be in this area. The only way in is through my management office, which only employees can go through, and the fire exit which I went through. The person I saw certainly wasn't the employee working with me, or any management. I got out through the parking lot, finished my shift and went home. I worked there for 2 more months without incident. I didn't take out the trash, however, and when I did, I always make sure someone was with me. I have no idea who that man was, or worse, what he wanted with me. I'm certain it wasn't any staff, so the only thing I can think of is whoever was in the last movie of the night stuck around, and for some unknown frightening reason, followed and went after me. Story number 3. My name is Alice, and this story happened a month ago. I work at a movie theater in my local town where I work late evenings and some late nights. It's quite a small theater where you buy everything at one counter, like food, tickets, and that sort of thing, because it was never busy. It was a Friday night around 10:30 p.m. There were only a few movies left to see, and as usual, it was pretty dead at this time. It was just me and another staff member, but they were in the screens cleaning up. I was leaning with my back against the counter scrolling through Twitter when I thought I heard something behind me. I turned around to see a man standing there watching me. I startled and let out a slight laugh, saying, "Oh, you made me jump." The man gave no response and continued watching me. He was wearing a red hoodie, blue jeans, had black stubble, glasses, and was wearing a Boston Red Sox hat. My smile started to fade as I said, "How can I help you?" "One ticket to Annabelle and a medium hot dog, please." I went to get him his hot dog. As I was waiting, I could just feel him staring at me. I took a quick glance to check, and yeah, he was watching me still, with that dead expression. First, I was just feeling awkward. Now I was feeling uncomfortable. I gave the man his hot dog and ticket. He looked at me with a confused face. "Can I help you with anything else, sir?" He replied saying, "I thought I said I wanted onions." Certain he never asked, but I said, "Oh, sorry, give me a second." I went to put onions on the man's hot dog, but when I turned around, he was gone. I scanned the seating area. I couldn't see him anywhere. In fact, I didn't see him for the rest of the night. The next day, I went into work, and my boss, Natalie, who was also a good friend of mine, said she needed to show me something in the security room. She showed me footage of last night's recordings. I couldn't see anything at first. Nat then asked me, "Do you know that guy?" "What guy?" I replied. She then pointed at a man who was hiding around the corner spying on me. It was the same weirdo from last night. He was just hiding behind the counter watching me. I felt sick knowing the fact I had no idea this man was just watching me for ages. Nat then showed me another clip from the same night. It was when my back was against the counter on the phone. The man stood behind me like I knew, but after watching the security footage, he was stood right behind me watching me for about 10 minutes without saying a word. My boss Nat said to tell her if he comes by again. It's been a month and I haven't seen him around yet. Story number 4. So in my town there was a small 5-screen non-profit indie theater, which does a lot of first-run independent films and that sort of thing. The theater is usually pretty quiet and empty during the week except for 1 or 2 employees and a handful of regular patrons. I'm a pretty pretentious guy, so I end up at this theater a lot more than I do at the Regal across town. This one evening a few months ago, my girlfriend and I go to the theater to catch a movie. Like I said, the place is usually very quiet, so we didn't think much of it when we walked into the theater and only saw one other person. That is until we walked up the aisle and saw that this rather obese man had surrounded himself with a group of troll dolls. Usually something children play with until they're about 5 and then give up on. Except this man was clearly in his mid to late 30s, 300 pounds and balding. We don't really say anything to each other, but quietly move down to the very end of the row. That way we can keep him in our peripheral vision. He is 2 rows behind us and roughly centered in his row. We live in a small town somewhat notorious for bizarre townies, so we were a little worried but not too creeped out at this point. The movie starts and all is well and good for a little while, until we hear talking and a couple laughs. Remember now that we're the only 3 people in the theater. I take a quick glance back to see if maybe I've missed seeing someone else enter the theater. Nope. The man is talking and laughing with his creepy little troll dolls all laid out on the armrests. At this point I'm sitting a bit on edge, glancing over fairly regularly while still trying to watch the movie. He quiets down eventually, and so I focus more on the movie, until he stands up and shuffles into the aisle. I swear at that moment I was sure that it was all over, and this man was going to murder me and serve me as an appetizer to his trolls come dinner time. I keep him squarely in my vision for the next 20 minutes, till he goes back to his seat and resumes talking to his dolls. Time goes by and nothing else happens. Credits roll and my girlfriend and I sit there for a few minutes, waiting for the man to pack up his trolls and leave. The credits are still rolling as we step out into the aisle, turn the corner to go to the exit, and almost run into him standing. We avoid any eye contact and walk as fast as we can without running until we reach the car. I don't know if there was any danger or anything wrong here. He never made any threatening moves, and for all I know, he was perfectly safe but mentally ill. That said, I don't even remember what movie we went to, because I was so terrified of this man. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future videos. Until we meet again, stay sinful.
I'm of the mindset that everyone should know a little bit about cars. I've always been mechanically inclined to, and I think that may have actually saved me. I was using dating apps a few years ago. Met this guy, he seemed super nice. We talked for a few weeks before I was willing to meet with him. His dad owned a local gun store where I would go to get my Target stuff. I used to be in a women's league for competition shooting. So I had seen this guy around and had a decent impression of him, but wanted to be safe. He invited me to a concert at a local town site. It was a concert that I really wanted to go to as well, and I figured that it would be safe since it was at a well-known place with a lot of security and all that. I let him pick me up because he had talked about mechanics and cars, and he wanted to show me his Mustang. He bragged about how well he kept it running and how he babied it and all that. I was into time trial racing at that time, so I was interested to see what he had done. So he picks me up and we start heading to the event. Right before the exit, he says that his car is acting funny though. I was watching the dash, and if you've been in racing, then you know that our cars and trucks usually have extra accessories and all that. Whether it's aftermarket racks and gauges or switches, there's usually something aftermarket inside the car. There was nothing extra. The car felt like it was shifting correctly. There was no shudder or noise, nothing to indicate any problems. I was like, that's weird, and all I said was we should try and limp it to the concert venue. It's less than a mile away, and it's better than being stuck on the I-15. He agrees and drives us very carefully the last mile. We get to the concert, and things were okay-ish, I guess. He kept watching me and buying me drinks. I refused to drink, though. So every time he gave me one, I would make up an excuse and go to the bathroom and flush it. He kept making comments about how well I was handling my alcohol. I was super uncomfortable. The concert ends though, and it's time to leave. For context, this concert happened at the local reservation town site, and at the time the res did not have great cell service, so I couldn't get a hold of anyone to come and get me. So I decided to bite the bullet, and I talked him into taking the old highway instead of the 15. It sounds silly, I know, but when you take the old highway, even though it's slower, people are more willing to stop and help you than they are on the freeway. I figured that if he was having car troubles, it would be safer, and we wouldn't have people flying by us at like 80 miles per hour. So, we make it halfway between the town site and our town, and he says the car is acting funny again and pulls over. I'm stone cold sober and didn't notice anything wrong, so when I get out of the car, I go to check it out with him. He starts making comments though about how I'm drunk and I should wait in the car and that it'd be safer because you can't trust drunk Indians, especially with a little girl like you. This dude had no idea that I was actually native. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up, so I checked my phone though, and I just barely have service and start texting my dad. As I'm walking away from the engine compartment, I noticed that he was watching me, so I started acting like I was trying to get cell service to get help. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched this man take the spark plug wires off the distributor cap and switch the order. Your spark plug wires connect to the distributor cap based on the order of your cylinders firing, and so doing that will either make the car run terrible or not even turn on. I managed to send my dad a picture of what he was doing, and my dad tells me to start walking. As I go to walk away, this guy gets back in the car and opens his glove box, which exposes a pistol that he had. He tells me not to worry and that we'll be safe. I probably broke a world record for how fast I was texting my dad. He starts telling me to just walk and tell the guy that he's on his way and that our friends live up the road. So I do. I start walking with a purpose and take off as quickly as I can. The guy is yelling after me, and I yell back, "The wind is too loud and I can't hear you. I'll be back with our friends." I'm scared out of my mind. We're 10 miles out of town with no one around. The closest road actually led to a cemetery, so there's really no one here to help me. And I get a really bad feeling the farther that I get from the car. So I turn around and look, and the hood is closed. The lights are on. So I decide to hide in the farm irrigation next to the road. I keep walking towards town and text my dad what's happening all this time. I hear a car slowly coming up behind me and see a flashlight, so I press against the side of the ditch and wait for it to pass. Once I can't hear it anymore, I crawl out and just kind of keep walking along the weeds. My dad texts me that he sees me, so when he pulls up, I run to the truck. As we make it towards the town, we actually pass the dude, and he's got like 3 cop cars around him. My dad tells me not to worry about what happened, and I heard through the grapevine later on that he had been charged with violent crimes in the past and that he'd been arrested that night for concealed carrying without a permit. The police never talked to me, but I haven't seen that guy in town ever since then. Which brings me back to why I think everyone should know at least a little bit about cars. If I didn't have experience with cars that day and didn't know what he was doing, I could have been dead in that ditch instead of hiding. Most communities have something where you can take basic car care and maintenance courses, and I highly recommend everyone takes them and at least knows the basics. This dude knew that I knew cars, but his whole goal was to get me to get drunk and then I wouldn't realize what was happening. It was a frightening experience, and these days I'm a lot more cautious. So we just moved into this apartment a week and a half ago. My son will be 6 months old tomorrow, and he's got his own room. We live on the 2nd floor of a 2-story building. We only share our stairs with one other apartment, and there are 2 underneath the 2 of ours, so it is like we have 4 apartments in our little nook, I guess you could say. When you walk up the stairs, the 2nd bedroom of both apartments has a window that you have to walk by to get to our front doors. Not my favorite, but I always make sure it's locked, and the only people walking by should be the person who lives across from us, since they're the only ones with reason to come up the stairs. The way the room is laid out too is when you walk in, you come into a corner. On the wall, coming off the right of the door, there are 2 more. It's his closet and bathroom. I have his crib in between those 2 doors, his changing table dresser, and all that are in his closet. If you stand by his crib and flip 180, you'll see the wall with the window, and from left to right on that wall I have this rocking chair, a cart with a lamp, books, pictures, all those things that we need for when rocking and whatnot. Then I have a little shatterproof mirror for him on the wall by the floor. Then it's his little play corner with bookshelves and toy shelves, and going around the corner is more shelves and his ball pit. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, on the windowsill I had this baby monitor. We have one of those video monitors that we were gifted for his baby shower, and I like this one because it can't connect to phones or outside technology, only to the device's own screen or control panel that stays in our room. Something you should know too is that we were blessed with a baby who has slept through the night since he was 3 months old. About 4 or 5 nights ago, my son woke up though at exactly midnight screaming and crying, "Mama." He's just had his first word about 2 weeks now, and he uses it like crazy. But I rushed in and shushed him and rocked him back to sleep. When I got back to our bed, I didn't even look at the monitor, I just sort of crashed. In the morning, I went to look at it, and when I woke up, it was facing outside. Like the whole camera unit had somehow turned itself around. It does have a pan back and forth feature, but this was not that. I mean, the whole thing had been shifted around. I rushed in and checked, and everything else was as it should be. My son was fast asleep. I asked my husband if he had moved it, and he looked confused and said that he slept all night. The thing is that I instantly ran in there when I heard him crying and didn't even glance at the monitor, so I don't know if it happened before or after I went in there to check on him. Anyway, fast forward a few days and nothing else is out of the ordinary. Then tonight I see weird stuff on the monitor. I'd say it almost looks like smoke swaying back and forth in front of it. My husband saw it too, so we both went into his room, but there was nothing. So we decided that it was either a bug, a mist from his humidifier, or maybe just a trick of the light or something. Now it's 1 a.m. My son wakes up from a dead sleep screaming again. I say, I'll go, and I roll out of bed. I shush my son back to sleep and go to set him down, and as I do, I hear 4 consecutive knocks, either on or outside the window, just booms. I don't know how to describe it other than it sounded like someone was knocking on a door, quite loud too. I rush over and pull back the blinds, and absolutely no one is outside. The window is locked and there's nothing there. But I know what I heard. It was clear as day. I waited a few more minutes and came back to bed after checking all the windows and the doors, but I can't help but think that maybe there's something here. Unless there is a logical explanation, I'm very open to that too, but in fact, that's my favorite choice for what's going on here. But does anyone have any advice or insight? Also, I'll say this at the risk of losing some people here, but I'm very sensitive to the paranormal, and I've not had bad or any weird vibes or anything in the house, except for the 2 nights that he woke up screaming. But that could also be mum anxiety, right? Anyway, if you have any idea as to what to do about all this, then please do help me. To start this off, I'd like to say that I don't live in a creepy house. It's old, I admit, but in the charming sort of way. It doesn't feel negative when you walk in. It feels like home, really. Always just home. So you can imagine my absolute shock when I was laying in bed alone this morning watching something watch me back. 4 a.m. this morning, my husband left our bed to go to the bathroom. Our room is decent sized, but from where the bed sits, you can sort of see one of the 2 windows in the room, the other one being covered by blinds and the TV. It being 4 a.m. in the summer, it's a bit light to where you can see outlines and curtains and things. We have no animals, by the way. So I laid in bed waiting for him to return so that we could cuddle when I blinked and suddenly saw movement in the dark. A dark mass in the shape of a head had moved over the top of the covers just enough to where I could make out the fact that it was moving. I froze because I thought that it was my husband at first. Sometimes when he gets up, he'll sit in the chair and put on the headphones and play video games to not wake me up when he can't go to sleep. And I thought that maybe he had just got back in and I just didn't hear the door open, and that's why he was sitting in the dark looking at me like that. So I asked him, "Why are you sitting on the floor?" A few seconds with my heart pounding, no answer, and then I heard the doorknob click, and as soon as my husband walked in, it ducked down and it just disappeared. I screamed, obviously, because, what the heck, right? And had him do a thorough search, but he didn't find any intruder. I still can't explain it, and I'm scared to go into my bedroom alone now. I experienced a lot of stuff, especially as a kid. I've been told that I had an aunt that had passed away in another life that was trying to look out for me, but I've never ever seen what I witnessed this morning. It did not make me feel safe at all. This happened a few years back, and though I've experienced other strange phenomena since, this in particular has always stuck in my brain. So I worked as a server at what was portrayed to be a high-class evening restaurant where a reservation was required. The restaurant was inside a pre-Civil War era stone house and located right in the center of a well-known haunted town with a lot of history. It was around 4:50 p.m., 10 minutes before opening. I was the only one on the schedule that night besides for the chef. The dining room had large street-facing windows that had been sealed shut for years with no other opening to the outside. Everything was set up for the night, and all I had left to do was lighting the 15 or so candles that decorated the mantel and the tables. The candles had no trouble sparking up and had steady, consistent flames. Before exiting from the dining room, I took a last remaining glimpse to ensure perfection and was very happy with my work. I then left for the kitchen to quickly check in with the chef before opening. I made my way back to the dining room after no more than maybe a minute, and when I say that I was absolutely gobstruck, I'm not kidding, because every single candle had been blown out. And there was still smoke lingering from all 15 candles as well, and my mind just cannot come up with an explanation, a logical one anyway, for this. I mean, there was no possible entrance in the dining room besides the front door, which had been firmly locked. The chef and I were the only two people there, and he wouldn't have been able to leave the kitchen without me noticing, since there's only one pathway between the two rooms. There were no fans or open doors, and as stated before, all the windows were sealed shut. I remember the air feeling abnormally still as well, and getting an overwhelming sense of discomfort and dread upon re-entrance, as if I was being, watched. Up until this day, I still haven't been able to find any solid reasoning behind the occurrence, and truly believe that something strange made itself known that night.